Okay, we can test the audio or we can act as if it is perfect and never pay attention to the audio itself. What can we do? What is it that we want to do is the real question. Mm, I, mm, I don't really know. Do we need to test audio? Is this good? I think it is good. I don't want to test audio. Once again, no. I don't feel like testing audio, so yeah. let me do the simplest thing, and that is to transition. Because yeah, we are basically done. I'm not forgetting. Well, yeah, I have some other things to prepare meanwhile, but anyways, I am here. Ah, no, wait. There it is. As I was trying to say, hello everyone. We are once again reunited, all of us, for another great occasion, in which we are going, in particular today, to analyze some more content to see where is it that this whole adventure that is learning take us all. And well, I also think I have a particular thing that I want to utilize. Let me see. Slash, I think it is highlight. No, what is the command? Unique beep shut. No, slow shield shut. Let me see. There are like 20 different. Fuck, why are there so many commands here on this shot? I just need one, my brother. Ah! Mm, what is it? Give me a second. Give me a second. I know that it is somewhere around here. Um, uh, mm, uh, uh, Marker! There it is! What the fuck is marker? Let me test this shit. Marker. Marker. What? I think I just need to say something like. Let me see. Talking. Did it change anything? What? What the fuck is this? What? What the fuck is a marker? Sorry. Sorry for being kind of. I don't know. Uh, I wanted to simply test that tool, so yeah. Ignore that. I don't know what the fuck is that. So yeah. Um, what the fuck is market? Anyways, let me let me get this thing over here. Which one is it? This. Okay. We have it over here. Almost ready. Give me a second. I need to annotations. Turn off. Yeah. Um, Wait. Can I optimize the PC a little bit so that it doesn't long it doesn't run completely lag and stuff like that? Or do I have to worry about being completely scuffed once again? Because I was checking and I learned that one of the main reasons as to why this gets so incredibly impossible to maneuver when I am streaming writing stuff on the chalkboard, let's say whiteboard, it is because my PC can't handle at the same time streaming and me talking. So yeah, this is amazing. Let me see. Let me try to shut down some stuff. I have the Mahabharata still open from yesterday. I should try to wait. Now that we are here, I will take advantage of this opportunity and find what is it that I left it yesterday, I think, because I don't even remember what I read. So I needed to find a little bit of logic as to where is it that I ended or finished my reading. It was in the Vaivahika Parva. Messenger King Drupada has prepared a grand feast for the bridegroom and his party. Media Karma, the rituals, do not delay. Look, what? Was it here? Uh, where is it? Shura Krishna, Mr. Satrias. I think it was. I think it was Vaivahika Parva. I think, or is it? Let me see. Was it? I have it over here, written down somewhere. Let me see. Was it the Vaivahika Parva? Water rest? Yeah. that was what I read last time. So let me check somewhere else. Meanwhile, and also hello, this is Julia. Sorry for not saying anything. I am trying to find where is it that I left this book last time. 100, 200, 200, and did I change completely? How many? What? What? How many pages did I read? What the fuck? I don't know. No, yeah, I can't. I literally almost don't remember anything. So, wait, no, here, Vidragamana Parva. That is where we left, right? Oh my god, yeah. Wanting to please Krishna with his Tirat, Teshas accepts all his gifts joyfully. Yeah, 100 of his shining vessels, chalices, goblets, and outers were his hands, all encrusted with jewels. I can't remember almost anything from yesterday. This is kind of a painful thing. Yeah, Mayor Queen of Kurungala and its capital, Savior Husband Kingdom is still at I think it was over here. Let's say that it was over here. I can't almost remember anything from this story. I have to accept that we might have drunk a little bit more than what was the proper thing to do. So yeah, let me respond to myself over here. 200. I think it is 201. Let me see. 202. Okay. Happy New Year. Or as I say, happy to be here. Welcome. Thank you. And I hope you also had a great New Year. It was, at least for me, very, very joyful. So yeah, do not worry about anything. We're going to have a great future ahead of us. Anyways, let me write this down here. Take this. And also, yeah, welcome, Strepanso. Welcome to you, and also hope you have a new year yourself. At least here we had a great one. So now what? Wait. Let me move this stuff over here. Wait. Is there any way for me to pin a window? I want to pin this stuff, but I can't. Pin. Pin. No, I can't. I can't pin this. This is so annoying. Anyways, let me get this over here. YouTube. Because I was, aside from that, I was with everything else ready. So sorry for taking so long. But wait, because maybe while we are streaming, it might be kind of a not so enjoyable thing. Yeah, but for those who are watching the world, now that I have knowledge of how to utilize the marker, I just do a slash marker. Let's say lecture starts. There it is. This is amazing. This is the tool that I was searching for so many years. This is amazing. We are so incredibly great. What the fuck is this? Amazing. Anyways, we're over here. We have a lecture to continue observing. So yeah, did I forget to say anything? I think I didn't forget about anything, right? Yeah. Wait. No, I didn't close the Mahabharata. Yeah, there it is now properly. Slash marker. He's just like Northern Lion. Yeah, probably. Well, I think the speed should be adjusted. Everything should be fine. So yeah, let us now, for real, start with this lecture 8, MIT 9.0, Introduction to Psychology. Yeah, content. What the fuck? Wait, I can't hear shit. And wait.
Yes, in our environment. On the other hand, there are channels of information that sneak into us unconsciously or with minimal attention. And that experimental research has kind of shown us what requires our focused attention to be noticed and what can sneak in through pathways, things like features in our environment. And so I want to talk to you today about two kinds of spectacular disorders of attention and higher level vision and insights that give us into the brain bases of attention. And again, the message is how much we construct by the rules of our mind and brain the environment that we see around us.
Okay, wait here. Okay, wait. Very nice. I can finally remember a little bit of what it is that we did last time, if I am not so wrong then. Because as it says here, last lecture was about memory and all of that stuff. One of the main things that I can still very well remember is the quote that he did of you can remember a lot more than what you expect, and at the same time you have a lot more, not a lot more, a worse memory than what you will ever ascertain somehow. So yeah, it is interesting to analyze the memory. I I still struggle a little bit with understanding how it is that this particular idea of memory and all of that fits with psychology, as I had said on the last occasions, in the sense of, it is interesting, yeah, to grasp almost, let's say, the most things that you can when you are learning about them. But at the same time, what is kind of the, not the point, what is the idea behind having so much bare minimum knowledge when you don't really delve into whatever it is that you're learning? So that is why I kind of observe it as it is alright to have it. It can be better, I think. So yeah. Anyways, I continue.
So we'll talk about blind sight. That's a great name. The paradoxical state that people are cortically blind, but they kind of perceive some things. We'll talk about that. What is it? What do we know about its brain basis? What system of unconscious perception might occur, be in our brains? In these patients, is there only visual system? In you and I, it's something in us, and we don't know exactly what it's doing relative to our conscious visual system, but we have the same brain system available to us. And then neglect what it is, its brain basis, and how it teaches us again how we construct the world around us to know what space we're in and what's around us. So a reminder, and I think you know this well by now, that the world out there is
Nice.
divided
Wow.
into a left and right visual field as we look forward in the middle, that the information from the left visual field goes through your brain and ends up shown in the right primary visual cortex, from the right visual field into your left primary visual cortex. But there's one other pathway we haven't talked about it very much, which goes to a structure called the superior colliculus. It's part of your midbrain. And it's what the system we think gives rise to the possibility of sensation without perception. That phrase, sensation without perception, is a good one to describe blind sight, and we'll describe it in a moment. So from your retina, where all vision has to go through, a little bit of information, a small number of fibers go to a part of your brain that controls your pupillary reflexes, what makes your pupil get wider or smaller to see. 90% of the fibers coming, nerve fibers that come from your eye and go through the lateral geniculate are through the major system that you heard about from Melissa that connect to your primary.
What the fuck? What the fuck? What? Teacher is
Visual
dying, my
cortex.
man.
And then there's one other small visual pathway from your retina to this superior colliculus, sometimes called the technopulvinar system. So it's a small pathway from your eyes in terms of the number of nerve fibers. And so people say, well, can we say what's not?
Okay, wait. Okay. Question. Didn't we have already observed stuff like this before? Aren't we kind of rewatching content? What is what? Okay, very great to learn once again about all of this. But isn't this repeated? Like, uh, what? I mean, most of the things are already what has been already, yeah, what has in previous occasions discussed. Is it simply delving even more? Did I miss that part? What? I don't know.
Eyes in terms of the number of nerve fibers. And so people say, well, can we say what's not done by the major visual pathway that goes from the eye to the cortex? What's done by this other small pathway? And one of the ways I looked at it originally, all the way back in 1881, was to create in dogs bilateral occipital lesions. So now they're cortically blind. They're not retinally blind. They're cortically blind. It's in the cortex. And what can these animals do? And they were very impressed that although these animals didn't recognize many things,
Wow.
they could steer their way around their environment. They wouldn't bump into things. If you had a blindfold on, or if you were retinally blind and weren't given any opportunity to know your environment, you would bump into things, right? So these animals seem to steer their way around things pretty well. And they can do some other very simple tasks, even though they ought to have been seeing nothing. So this is a suggestion in animals that there's something in the brains of primates that gives you some information that doesn't go through your conscious cortex. And then a number of patient studies in patients with naturally occurring injuries have really given us a chance to experiment on them in a human and relate them to human experience. So here's a patient who had a large injury, a large bleed in the right visual cortex. So because of this, this patient was blind.
This has a particularly nothing to do with the topic itself of, you know, vision and the ways in which our brain works when we have different kinds of impaired vision, yes. But it is related to what he said about um, we can analyze people only when they were previously injured, and all of that idea that, in a sense, human rights and I think, yeah, it is human rights basically, that you cannot do almost any experimenting with people. I have been thinking, and I mean, it seems probably very dark to simply say it will be interesting to test more stuff on humans, but at the same time, aren't we trying to have real science done? Why is it that we decided to not do it in the sense of, you know, I mean, we want to create proper tools or proper um, science-based knowledge, let's say. And if we leave behind the part that concerns the most, every single one, that is to properly test exhaustively every, or yeah, as most as we can, of the aspects that comprise any particular thing at all, we might as well end up coming with an even worse version than what anybody could comprehend in the moment itself. And I understand it from the side of, yeah, it is interesting to see that maybe we have the possibility somehow of trying to utilize simply those who are injured already, because in this particular case, you cannot really give people injuries. But what if we were to offer them, like, I don't know, $1 million for for the sake of testing something like this? I think some people will really use money like that, you know? I mean, why wouldn't it be possible if you were completely willing to explain all the parts that have to deal with the fact of you will get hurt, you will probably get permanent damage done to you by this particular experiment. And we, in this particular case, for example, they already know how to deal these kind of lesions in the brain. They only want to test different results, and they want to have an even wider array of people to have a better, what is it? Uh, when they want to have more test, there it is. When they have to want more test subjects, it is necessary to have, obviously, the widest array of people from completely different environments so that you can properly have a correct understanding of whatever it is that you're observing. But on one hand, even if it is true, it remains necessary to have as many as you can. And it is better always to lack the opportunity of analyzing all of the different patients that there are than to have to struggle with trying to comprehend or trying to, yeah, to properly observe different symptoms and different causes for anything, because there lacks sufficient amount of those people with those problems, diseases, um, particular conditions, whatever. So yeah, for the sake of that, if we have the proper understanding as to how to make something, in a sense, correctly, not more damaging than what it should be, why are we not trying to push for a narrative in which we create, let's say, safe enough spaces in which people could trade those parts of themselves for the sake of not only also helping science, but also, or well, even more, getting the what is it, monetary benefit that is to sacrifice a part of you for that scientific endeavor, let's say. So yeah, I mean, it is interesting to see that somehow because I correlate what I say with what has been shown in other cases. Um, the experiment of where you have a person put their hand in one side of the. Okay, I am elaborating too much on something that literally nobody can see. Um, Now I can properly notice also that it might be necessary for me to bring up the whiteboard, but do I need to do that? Do I need? Uh, what if we test? What if we test? What if we test that? Let's test this shit. Amazing. This is content creation, my brothers. We are getting somewhere. This is amazing. This is what the fuck is this? Um, give me a second. Give me a second. I think where do I have this? This is craziness. This is me going crazy basically. You have let's say this is the head of somebody basically. This is the head and this is the hair of somebody on one side, and you have them stay like this, watching over here on this direction with their head facing this side, and you have them put their hand over here. Let's say hand. This is a hand, this tries to be a fucking hand or something like that. But fucking god, this is horrible. Wait, something like this, more proper of a hand. I cannot draw hands. Yeah, I know it. There it is. Let's say that represents a hand on one side, and on the other, you put a trying to make as similar as possible. You put okay, wait. This is also not visually accurate. So let's say that the real hands is over here because there needs to be what is it? A plastic or rubber hand, and separating this a wall that does not allow the vision over here where the real hand is. Let's say, and what the fuck? There it is. You have the real hand resting there, and you have a not a particular, you have a set of experiments in which you see if the person can somehow, I think it was related to the sensitivity and assimilating, or no, the visual inputs of the brain end up believing because you end up doing, okay, let me show it like here. Wait. Here you have a feather, something like this. That is a feather. You have a feather. You have a hammer. That is the end of this um, experiment. The hammer. And you have, what else did you have? What I am missing. What I am missing. What I am missing. Yeah. Wait. At least in the one that I saw on TV once when they were explaining this concept, you have a rubber ball. So you have these three things, and with all of them, you go on the hand and you first rub the feather on both hands, and you try to do the literally same motion that you do here. Let's say if you start over here, you start over here on the real hand, and you do the literally same thing in both hands so that the person feels and starts to assimilate as if both hands were one. Let's say after that you move with the ball, and with the ball you have to simply imitate once again all of the actions that pertain to the realm of, okay, you're going to have a plastic surface going to be touching your skin directly. So you utilize the ball to spread it around the middle and around the upper parts of the arm. And while you do it on the rubber hand, you once again have to do it on the real hand. And the final goal of this, I think, I don't remember at this point if there was some periods of adaptation or not of repetition so that the brain can really immerse himself in that narrative or not. I don't remember. But what you do is after all of that is done, you with the hammer, a real fucking hammer, you go and smash the plastic hand like, bah, there it is, And the people, what ended up being revealed is that most of the time humans tends to, because the brain ends up mostly eating what is visually sent to it, they end up thinking and almost feeling sometimes the hurting that is born from being hidden, yeah, from being hidden in the not real hand, let's say. And it takes some time for some people to adapt to that sensation of, okay, what I just experienced is completely false. But the point is, you somehow induce pain on somebody. And the point correlating to what I said before, we are trying to talk about an idea in which you want to not make others suffer. Yet, in something like this, you inflicted mental suffering. And I mean, for example, other one was the idea of things. Wait a second. Um, Another test that I can properly remember that is. Give me a second, here. The test of having somebody, let's say, here, watching over here, and over here there is a glass. They have on this particular side, they have a thing that is like this. They have a whole box in which they needed to move some, what is it? Some, what the fuck are those knobs? There it is. Some knobs in which the different elec electricity amounts were more and more increased, and more, supposedly more electricity was being discharged to some people. Um, in this side, there was it wasn't even a real participant. It was, what was the name? An actor that was skilled enough so that they could fake that they were being slowly hurt. And the particular point of this study was to see that you can really manipulate some people into making others hurt people because you are giving them signals that what they are doing is important and what they are providing to you needs to be fulfilled, even if it is not the best thing, and even if it is somehow hurting others. So the point itself kind of goes over what we are trying to talk about here, because the idea is, in some cases, some people really felt terribly bad for what they were doing. As, let's say, like this, they realized, or they thought at the very least, that they were hurting somebody. So they ended up thinking that their actions were having a real consequence on reality. And I mean, you are inflicting mental pain on somebody in these cases, in both this experiment in which you force, indirectly force somebody to take l- almost little, well, yeah, to a certain point, if I don't misremember, the last option was supposedly a killing amount of electricity being given to a supposedly other side also subject, and some people were able to do it. And the point is, you're inflicting mental pain in people. You are not really, mm, let's say, leaving aside the fact that they shouldn't also be inflicted those kind of things. And I mean, in a sense, what I can comprehend more properly is um, they might not be the most harmful kind of experiments, but on one side it is true. On the other, they might need, to be properly taken care of, in the sense of it is kind of damaging to not even pay attention to the reality of you might leave traces on their minds, or you might give them everlasting memories about something that they might feel was completely bad, and how that differs from physical pain or from physical lesions in the sense of if you really believe that what you did is completely bad to the degree to which there is nobody capable of redeeming you from that particular vision that you had before, how can you somehow go back from that in the same sense of some people should I don't think that they should we still or yeah let's say like this on one hand it happens that and on the other we are reluctant to the idea of giving permanent lesions to people or permanent damages to people by other more physical based experiments. What is the difference there? That is my question. I mean, yeah, I don't know. It seems kind of a lot, and I probably will have to analyze after we are done with this because I just noticed this particular thing in the sense of what the fuck is that? So yeah, I don't know. Also, I wrote it, but I wasn't paying attention. Hello, Crank Crack. Like I don't know how much. 5 minutes later. So yeah. Now, anyways, we continue with this because yeah, I was trying to talk about this.
The left visual field.
Oh yeah, I might have lost myself in the
with
point.
naturally occurring
Like,
injuries.
what the fuck is this?
And then a number of patient studies in patients with naturally occurring injuries have really given us a chance to experiment on them in a human and relate them to human experience. So here's a patient who had a large injury, a large bleed in the right visual cortex. So because of this, this man was blind in the left visual field. This field was fine. This field was blind, vertically blind. And the way that people figure out in what way are you blind, what parts of the world do you see and do you not see, is they'll put you in front of a computer monitor and they'll turn on lights in various locations, and they'll create a map like this, which shows you where you respond when a light comes on and where you don't do it. So your job, basically, you just look in the middle and you say, push a button when a light comes on. So you're waiting and the light comes on somewhere on the monitor. So what this picture is showing you is that the person could respond when the lights came on anywhere on the left side, but never responded, never said a light came on the right side. People call this perimetry. It's a standard neurological test of visual difficulty. Here's a person whose injury harms only a quadrant of their visual thing. So they never respond when a light turns on in that quarter of the world out there. But the other three quarters they respond to. So that's a way of testing what do you do. You're not asking them anything sophisticated, just did a light come on. Is that okay? So for this patient, here's the mapping. This patient was fine in the right visual field. This is one eye. This is the other eye. And terrible, with a few spots a little bit better because lesions occurring naturally in people are seldom perfect lesions. But you can see that all this area that's dark are areas that when a light came on in the left visual field, this man never responded that anything had turned on. There's nothing simpler, right, than light turning on and off. He did not experience anything turning on in that way in the left half of the world. So,
Wait, what? The point is, wait, can I say anything about it? Can, can I say anything about it? Like, I don't know, man. Yeah, I don't think I can really add something. Like, maybe sometimes what could be interesting to this particular idea of people having partial blind sight is to which extent can it be restored if it is possible to restore that, but at the same time bringing back the idea of we are so concerned with not giving or not dealing more damage to anybody. How can we know that sometimes the healing method lies behind another probably painful experience? Let's say, I mean, okay, the worst kind of example is in some cases it happens that we need to hit those, let's say, we need to hit our TV for it to function properly. Once it starts to have some problems with its signal or stuff like that, yeah. But how do we know that in some cases, obviously in a more sophisticated manner, maybe do we need to also do exactly the same thing, but to particular parts of the brain to restore somebody's vision? I mean, is it that the particular site in which the vision itself lies is completely destroyed? Which kind of methods could be utilized to try and heal those scars or damages, permanent damages? I don't know. Continue.
But they noticed as they gave this test that even when he was saying, I don't see anything, nothing's happening, that when they flashed something in that blind, cortically blind field, he would sort of move his eyes in that direction, all right? As if something in his mind and brain felt something had happened, and not only something happened, roughly where it happened, but that information was not available to his conscious mind. He's never pushing a button that he says he saw it. He always says nothing, I'm waiting for something to come on, and then if it comes on as a good field, he responds. Does that make sense? Okay. So, but something seemed to do it. And what they found then it was better than chance in the left visual field about things like if they put on a...
Wait, also, hello, Whiplash, welcome. Yes, Happy New Year to you. We had a great one. We are pretty fine. Remember to drink water just in case. And well, we're staying some bit. Why? Why not? That is the real question. So yeah, basically that. Um, well, yeah, but basically simply that.
Bigger patch of light. He could tell if you gave him a short line or a long line. Now, he would never say, I see the line. You would have to make him make a guess. So when you read the papers, it's something like, I don't see anything, I don't see anything. Well, you must guess. Is it a short line or a long line? There's no basis for me to guess. It'll be a completely random guess. But you must guess, okay? Short or long. And then if the lines are far enough apart in size, he's almost 100%, 97% accurate, okay? If he's forced to guess, but he never has the experience that he sees a line. He's just forced to guess and told that it's two lines. Or he can judge things like, is it a circle or a cross? Is it an X or an O? But he can't do something like a square versus a rectangle. It's very limited. Subjectively, he always feels he sees nothing. If he's given two choices, for some things, he can make the correct choice if he's forced to make a guess. And there's another...
Wait, here, okay. I think this, at least the way in which I think about it is, okay, equal to what happened with the other example of sometimes we find ourselves, what the fuck? There was a, I don't know, the one to write this one. This one was shown over here. Do I need to, I mean, we have tools. If we are not using those tools, whose problem it is? Are the tools the one who are inflicting pain on us because we are not using them? Or is it just our own negligence rejecting to use the tools? So yeah, let me use this. There was a test shown where you can only read X amount of characters always on your peripheral vision. Let's say, let me do a very watered down version, something like yeah. Let's go for the simplest kind of what is it? Sumer version, let's say. So we have a lot of stuff, and the more you read, the more you notice that sometimes things in your peripheral vision might change, but you might not completely see because at the same time as you are reading, let's say like this. Okay, the complete test was you're observing stuff from your eyes, and obviously you can only, let's say, observe a certain amount of stuff. And when you move from this line that is here, what the fuck was that? Here in the middle, directly to the one that is on the right side, you find yourself that in the biggest majority of the cases, you don't even notice that this whole thing on the what is it on the left side change form at all. You only see what is directly in front of you because you're forced to read and to not simply forced to read. You need to properly observe the world which you are interacting with as you want to have a proper understanding of that which you are observing. Let's say like that. And if you can't in any way properly make sense of things, you cannot go back or go once again forward. So for that same reason, you wouldn't really notice that any particular change was made to the surroundings because your vision is solely focused on what is directly in front of you. What is it that you're trying to completely digest, let's say? So, yeah, when you move from this to this, you don't properly observe the rest. And in the kind of opposite manner, what was shown here, what is shown here on the example, or well, not in this one, wait, here, on this one, maybe has to deal with the sense of sometimes we can't simply notice those things because we need to observe everything. But at the same time, even if we consciously cannot tell that things are changing around us because our brain, as it was shown in previous yeah, in previous videos, let's say like that, because you can observe everything being changed, and because even more, you can see and comprehend that the world around you, or well, not the conscious you, but rather your brain can process everything for the sake of knowing where is it that you're standing, as I said before. Because of that same reason, you can notice in this case if the yeah particular test is if the line is short or long, even if you yourself cannot somehow really see or consciously be able to notice anything at all. And I mean, in my brain, I am also finding it almost related to the idea of sometimes, even if you can't consciously notice it, concepts that you see later in your life correlate to previous experiences that you had because you sometimes never fully process all of that information. And or at the very least, even if you process that, the lingering memories of that event are brought back to the present because of some particular ways in which your brain was wired, being once again played when a new trying to settle down memory appears in front of you. So, because of those same reasons, let's say like this, you end up once again feeling like things happen, even if you can't properly know what is it that happened, or you sense that somehow it happens because of, let's say, happens, too many fucking happens. You notice that things in particular are starting to make sense or not, or that a memory triggers another one, but you cannot make sense out of it because you haven't properly developed an understanding about it. This feels like the same thing, even if you cannot see what is lying in front of you, because in some cases you have supposedly a complete blindness, yet that you are consciously bringing a question that is, okay, there is a line, is it short or long? Because you are forcing the brain to interact with what they observed before and make sense out of it, even if in some cases you cannot completely observe that, the imagery itself becomes clearer. Even if, in this case, you know that you're blind and you know that you cannot make any sense out of what you can't see, because to a deeper level, the unconscious mind develops in a way in which even the subtlest of the triggers activates a whole array of neurons, let's say. I don't know, I feel like I am fucking going crazy. Let me continue.
Some things he can make the correct choice if he's forced to make a guess. And there's other sophisticated ways, again, to show that even though he's unconscious of anything in his blind field, something in his mind and brain is processing information there. So here they had a thing where he pushed a button when a light came on. This is his good field, and it takes him on average 359 milliseconds. Okay. Now they do the same thing. This is his good field, but they put on at the same time a light in his blind field. And when they do that, his time goes up by about 1/10 of a second. as if the distraction in the blind field was slightly distracting him from making that button press. So another objective way of demonstrating that some information is being processed in the blind field, even though he never says he feels like something's happening there. So here's one more patient, and the last one I'll show you of this kind, who had the unfortunate occurrence of having 2 strokes, one in the left occipital cortex and one in the right occipital cortex, about 36 days apart. Okay, so now he was blind in both fields by the time he had both of his strokes. So he had a very unlucky person. Here in dark is the missing cortex that has died away.
No, no. This is so incredibly amazing. This is so incredibly amazing once again. At the very least, they provide some context, what? Content for the sake of. What the fuck was that? Okay, it was a car. Anyways, as I said before, yeah, we cannot see things because once again, link removed. Wow, copyrighted content, yeah. But I mean, I cannot remember seeing something similar to this, and I don't need to illustrate this one. It was already explained by the teacher. Even if the person itself cannot see, it somehow the brain takes the inputs that are coming from the almost non-existent um, visual entrance and visual pathways that this person, while blindsided, end up, as it says here, circumnavigating obstacles. So yeah, that is what happens. Short version.
Now, always the problems with humans is the injuries are not controlled and precise. And so here's 2 examples, one in monkeys, an incredibly clever experiment to get a monkey to tell you what he or she is thinking about, okay? And then one with infants as well, human infants. I mean, how do you get a monkey to talk to you about their subjective experience, right? The striking thing about blindsight is the person is saying, I see nothing, I see nothing, I see nothing, even as he walks past obstacles, precision and carefulness, right? So here what they did is they took monkeys and made unilateral lesions in them. One, there's a control monkey, and 3 where they surgically removed, as precisely as they could, the left occipital visual cortex and the corpus callosum that connects the left and the right. And the first task, and I'll show you in a moment, was to touch a light when it comes on. And the second half is the clever design to get the monkey to tell you what he or she subjectively feels is going on. So here's the video they would make of the monkey. And in one case, here's the light coming on.
Please.
So the monkey's had left removal, so this is the blind side. These bars show you how often they point correctly to a light going on. And under this circumstance, forced to point, here's the control animal. And you can see that the animals who are blind in this field do almost perfectly. When they're forced to point, they pick almost perfectly which stimulus comes on in the blind field. Okay. Now they add one more thing to the experiment. They have a number of lights on the good side. Here is a response that they can push, signal, I saw nothing. And if they truly saw nothing, they get the juice reward, for which they're working for, okay? But there's a light that can come on here in the bad fields on the right side. Now what happens? Here's the control monkey doing perfectly well for lights on this side, and when nothing is happening, pushing this bar to signal that nothing is happening. Sometimes no light comes on. So now the monkey's allowed to say, I see nothing, by pushing this big panel up here. Nothing seems to have turned on. But look what happens to the monkeys with the cortical lesions on the left. When this light comes on, they almost never say they saw it. They almost always push, I saw nothing. When they're allowed to say, I saw nothing by the response, then even though this thing that they can see, because you see here, they're responding perfectly well over here. But when they're allowed to sort of consciously respond what they see, then these black bars are all the way down. They almost never indicate they saw something. They almost always pick the response, I saw nothing. So the monkey is telling you what his subjective experience is, which is like the humans with the cortical lesions. They're reporting they see nothing, okay? Even though some part of their brain can pick it up. How about in humans? Well, so sometimes humans, children, infants, for medical reasons have to have hemispherectomies in the first year. So these are unfortunate infants who have severe brain injury, severe epilepsy, and it's considered better to help them by removing an entire hemisphere than to let them have the severity of the epilepsy they're having. These are rare cases of very unfortunate infants. And in these infants who got this for purely medical reasons to make their lives better, they also did an experiment to show you something not only about, I think, again, what happens in our conscious visual system, but how that system grows in infancy. So, and the growth of a conscious cortical visual system. So here's what they did. infants this young, because they're in their first year, can't even point, and you can't tell them to point, right? So again, you have to be clever experimentally. And what they did is they watched where their eyes moved and recorded that information, and that was the behavior. Sometimes they would have a fixation. They would always have a fixation. You're looking in the middle, and then something would come on this side or this side, in the blind field or in the intact field, okay? And they would see how often would their eyes move to a stimulus in their good field, which they expected all the time, but how often would it move to the stimulus in the blind field, the eye movement. Then they had a competition condition where you have a dot in the middle, and that fixation dot would stay on while a box appeared here or here. So the only difference between these two is there's a dot in the middle that can compete for what you look at. Okay? It's not a big competition. It's just a boring dot that stays on. But there's a big consequence. So here's how often they move their eyes to the target in the non-competition condition. The dot goes on, it goes off, and the box comes on in your good field or your bad field. And all these bars are up at the top. And practically every trial at 8 weeks, 10 weeks, and 12 weeks of age, the infant moves his or her eyes to the stimulus, whether it's in the blind field or the good field. So something in their mind and brain is letting them identify something and move their eyes to the good field, much like we talked about before for the adults. Now, in the competition condition, you can already see it's not quite the same. If there's a dot on and the box comes on their blind field, they don't always make it to the box. That dot is sort of capturing their conscious cortical attention and diminishing the likelihood they notice the box coming on in the blind field. And as the weeks pass from 8 to 10 to 12, just a month of development, look what happens. This bar goes from a little lower, a lot lower, near 0. That is.
I mean, what will probably be said here? A baby of that age cannot really integrate the sense of, yeah, I have a necessity for saying what I am seeing or not. So, what comes to my mind is the idea of most of the times, infants are very aware of their surroundings. As I said before, I don't even remember at this point. I think it was something from behavioral biology or something like that. I think based on the idea that animals in general, tend to be more alert when they are young because they need to watch their surroundings to understand what is it that they are seeing. And when you make sense of it, I will also, for example, I will not suggest that it is kind of impossible for anybody to do it, but I will ask the, the test itself, will things change if kids have the possibility of taking the test later on in life, like instead of starting at 8 weeks, starting at 12 weeks and seeing if at 8, 10, 12, okay, if at 12, 14, and at 16 weeks they have changed somehow or not. Because sometimes what might happen is also that if the kids or the infant brain get accustomed to seeing that, okay, even if there is a dot or not in the middle of this particular thing that I'm observing, sometimes, be it on the right or in the left, other objects appear, some cubes or blurry objects, because at that age you can't even make sense of most shapes. So yeah, you you notice that something appears in the corners of your eye, and when you are in a constant state of alert, you move your eyes to see it, but at the same time, after how much? 3 weeks? No, 6 weeks. Why would you have the necessity of, no, what? 4 weeks. It is amazing how I am struggling so much with this. After simply 4 weeks of doing the same thing over and over, you might already develop a sense of, yeah, I might not need to move my eyes to this particular thing that is, in this particular sense, on the right side, because I already saw it before and I know that it is not a threat. So yeah, I
From
don't
8
know.
to 12 weeks, what
Continue.
it looks like is happening is that as the cortical system matures and the infant's consciousness is growing in some sense, now it's no longer tending to process the information in the blind field if there's competition, right? Because the growth of that consciousness in the cortex is suppressing unconscious, the ability of the infant to communicate with unconscious systems or be guided by unconscious systems in the brain. The cool thing is, the implication of this is all of us have this collicular system in us. It's a visual system that's been around long through evolution. All of us have this massive conscious geniculus, right, the one that goes into your cortex system. And that dominates this other system. And so, we only see it revealed in these patients as guiding behavior. But, who knows what it really does in us, okay? Because it's sort of quietly sitting there. We don't have conscious access to it. And who knows how much is guiding our behavior, and it's very hard to figure that out. But it's definitely sort of disappearing from our conscious life within the first couple months of our development. So now I'm going to switch to the second major disorder we'll talk about, attention and neglect, and go through anosognosia, a spectacular version of that disorder, something about how it's behaviorally measured, its brain basis, and then a few more analyses. But in the book, there's a very nice chapter about these patients. Now, patients with blind sight are extremely rare. You have to have exactly the right kind of injury, to damage a lot of your occipital cortex, and those kinds of injuries rarely occur on that scale. Attention and neglect, what I'm about to describe to you, if any of you become physicians or work in hospital settings, you're guaranteed to see this a lot. Okay? A lot. It's very, very common for patients who've had things like stroke or brain injuries of some kind or another. And a pretty typical example is from Oliver Sacks. Most of the Sacks cases are pretty rare, prosopagnosia pretty rare. Neglect, incredibly common in the hospital ward, in neurology service. So here he talks about a woman, an intelligent woman in her 60s, massive stroke affecting deep inner back portions of her right cerebral hemisphere, good intelligence and humor. And what happens to her when they bring her her dessert or coffee on her tray in the hospital? Yeah, she complains that she's not getting enough food because she's only eating food on the right half of her plate, okay? The left half of the plate, it's as if it weren't present for her. When they say, but Mrs. S, it is right there on the left, she seems not to understand what they say and does not look to the left. If her head is gently turned so the dessert comes into sight in the preserved right half of her field, she says, oh, there it is. It wasn't there before. You understand? It's as if the left half of the plate did not exist. And if they swivel her head and now that left half of her plate is in her right field, okay? Now she goes, oh my gosh, who snuck that on my plate? Now I can finish my meal, okay? And it's not just that. She also only puts on makeup on half her face, looking in a mirror, which can lead to comical, impressions, okay? So it's not, she ignores the left half of her world, and it's not just that it isn't there, it's as if it couldn't be there. It's as if, like, what are you talking about? There's a left half of something. I see everything, okay? So we'll talk a little about this and understand more of it coming up. So neglect means is a failure to respond or report to something that's opposite to the lesion. Contralateral means opposite to the lesion. That can't be accounted for by simple things. These patients don't have primary visual problems. They understand language. They're paying attention. They're the ones who deny the left half of their body. They dress on one side. They eat.
Okay, I think at this point I can say something. I can say something. And I was thinking about, in some cases, it also happens that even people who might not be completely, or well, completely, to that extent of having to be in a mental hospital, even people like that also suffer from conditions like this, because you can notice that they, to a lesser extent, negate things that might have happened if they didn't completely show it before. In a sense, that is what kind of amazes me. The brain doesn't really develop completely equal for everybody, let's say. Based obviously on a lot of conditions. We're not talking about how it happens, simply that when it happens, the different, not, I don't think there is even a treatment for that in some cases. The different ways in which people need to face reality become even harder for them to navigate more properly, as they need to consciously keep themselves grounded, knowing, because to a certain extent, when it is lesser, you can notice it more. Let's say that sometimes they need to see things from completely different perspectives as they realize that they are lacking something fully created inside of them. And I had a third thing. What was it? Give me a second, because I want to also mention that it was something like, yeah, I mean, obviously also the concept of how can you notice if you are lacking something if you have never had that particular thing in you, let's say, or even if you have had it, how will you notice that you are lacking it now if there is no clear sign of it existing in you, and everything else in your life system makes complete sense? Let's say, I, yeah, kind of physically impossible for anybody in this particular case, for example, notice that they are not seeing the whole world when they have never before faced the reality of not seeing the whole world. And because of a brain damage, how will the person out of nowhere have to accept and have the capacity of understanding that they or what they are seeing is flawed in any way? So yeah, I don't know. Interesting, basically.
From one side of the plate. And they also have something that I'll show you in a moment the example of, because it comes back a couple times. And this sounds fancy, but it's simple. There's extinction to double simultaneous stimulation seen in the late stages. So here's what the neurologist does. And you'll see at least one neurologist doing this in a film clip coming up. And they do this all the time in the hospital. They'll wiggle their little fingers. They'll try to get in the middle of the patient. This isn't carefully controlled, but it's done on the bedside. They'll wiggle one side and say, do you see anything moving? Or the other side. And sometimes they wiggle both. And the typical response in neglect is already fascinating. So past the earliest stages of the disorder, they'll notice a thing on the left side, that's from their perspective, that's their neglected side. They'll notice it on the right side, that's their good side. Okay, they're noticing this finger wiggling, they're noticing that finger wiggling. But when the physician wiggles both fingers at the same time, then the patient will only notice the one on the good side. It's as if this is extinguished because this one grabs your attention. Okay? And you know they could see it by itself. So it's only when it's both sides that it's extinguished, and we'll come back to that. So it's kind of interesting. It's not that their mind can't see it, but when there's competition in the two fields, which reminds you a little bit of the blind side, then their mind can't see it. So a fascinating and rarer piece of this, but again, not very rare, is something called anosognosia, where they not only have the neglect that I just described, but they deny any problem at all. So typically, these are patients with big right lesions, about 5% of neglect cases. And a very fascinating neuroscientist, you may have read some of his stuff. He's a very creative mind, Ramachandran at UCSD. Did some semi-experiments with some of these patients. So these are patients with right-sided lesions. So they have weakness or non-use of their left hand. And so here's his dialogue with them. Can you use your right hand? And that patient's hand is fine. Yes. Can you use your left hand? Yes. And the patient can't use her left hand. Are your hands equally strong? Yes. Can you point to my nose with your right hand? And she does. Her right hand is fine. Can you point to my nose with your left hand? The paralyzed left hand is a left hand because there's a right hemisphere stroke, does not move at all. Are you pointing to my nose? Yes. Can you clearly see it pointing? Yes, it's about 2 inches from your nose. Can you clap? Of course I can clap. And here's what she does. Okay. Are you clapping? Yes, I'm clapping. Okay. She can't move her left side, but in every way in this patient's reports, she seems to deny in a deep sense that there's any problem in her performance or any weakness of any kind. So
okay. I I think I can properly say something like, in a sense, what might be happening somehow is because, yeah, I associate it also with the concept of not only is people incapable of fully realizing all the things that are happening to them, but also um, not pride, rather, yeah. For example, the concept of ghost limbs. If you are not accustomed to not having something, and even more in these cases, you have never seen yourself lacking that part of you, how will your mind process that you are not being capable of doing those actions now? Because you have all the components to do this particular act. And I guess the weirdest thing is to see it happening in front of you when you, yeah, you can't even notice that it is not happening. Like, I mean, the most probable easy way to find out to which extent the person might be delusional or not is if they are having this kind of visions, fiddle with their visions and interact with them in ways in which you're almost destroying their whole visions and seeing how, after that, obviously, they react. But I don't know, it seems at the very least very interesting that somehow people can create completely different narratives in front of them, even if everything else is always showing that they can't. I don't know.
He wanted to do a couple little experiments to show that that it's not just that they're saying it, but they'll follow all the way through. So imagine that you had injured your left arm was in a cast, and somebody asked you, I'm going to give you two choices. I'm going to give you $5 to screw in a light bulb. Your left arm is in a cast now, or $10 to tie your shoelaces. Which would you take? The light bulb, right? Because it's going to be hard to tie your shoelaces with one arm out of action. This person is the same way. She's had a stroke. Her left arm is not functioning. She should definitely take the definitely take the light bulb. She takes the shoelaces. And when the physician Ramachandran describes as she sits there with one hand trying to flop the laces together, making no progress at all. Okay? He says finally he has to end the exercise because he can't take it anymore. She'll just keep going, until, right? So she just doesn't process that her left side of her body is not working. And then he does another experiment, more impressive. I can use one, I think. Okay. So imagine this was a tray of cocktail glasses full of water, let's say to the very brim. But imagine there's 3 here and 6 things, right? You can see you're right at the top, and you're just hoping that the person bringing it to you doesn't spill it on you. And the person brings it over to you, actually filled with water, and asks a patient to hold the tray. Okay, can I pick on you for 1 second? Imagine you had only, how would you hold the tray if one arm was unavailable for you? Okay, bringing this over. Okay, it's like, yeah, the water's like very exciting. There's water. Yes, okay, all right. How would you have it if 2 hands were available to you? Okay, thank you. Okay, right? It's easy for you to imagine how you would hold it. They walk over to the patient with all this stuff. They hand it to her, and what does the patient do? She puts out her right hand on the right side, and the whole thing falls over. All right, they're trying to demonstrate that it goes all the way through. This person really believes there's not a problem, and they can be doused in water for a moment, and I'm sure dried appropriately, and still deny that there's any problem at all. Now, one thing they can do, and this is kind of a weird line of research, but there's a number of papers that show this, is if they put, and I'm not recommending you do this at home, because actually it's worse than it sounds like. If they take a syringe with cold water and they put it into the left ear, the image here, the patient's arm starts to move, they get nystagmus, and they ask them if they feel, how do they feel? And then she says, my ear is very cold, but other than that, I'm fine, okay? So but they've sort of given her a little bit of a shock in the left ear. And now he does the interesting experiment. Do you feel okay? She says her ear is cold. Can you use your hands at this moment when they've sort of done something in the left ear that sort of wakes up the opposite right hemisphere? I can use my right arm, but not my left arm. I want to move it, but it doesn't move. This happens just in a moment from the cold syringe in your ear. Whose arm is this holding up the paralyzed arm? It's mine, of course. Can you use it? No, it's paralyzed. Like, what kind of doctor do I have, right? It's paralyzed, of course. Now, here's something really fun in a Sherlock Holmesian sense. How long has your arm been paralyzed? Did it start just now? Because what he's asking is, does she have a memory somewhere in her mind of her entire experience? Or did she say, it's just started right now, I don't know how this happened, it's just not working? And she says, it's been paralyzed for...
But I mean, at this point, I'm not to be disrespectful, but isn't the person almost completely crazy? But like, I don't know, my man. At this point, it seems like we are dealing with somebody rather delusional, more than simply having
for several
visions
days
or
now.
whatnot.
About 90 minutes later, when they redo this,
Like
she's back to just how she was.
schizophrenia.
So they can temporarily alleviate this by this irrigation to the ear. So this denial of sort of the left half of your body, this denial that you have any disorder whatsoever is a very striking thing. And most patients, it clears up. This is not, you saw pictures of, from Melissa, you saw movies of patients with object disorders. Those don't clear up. Balint syndrome, spatial disorders, those don't clear up. This anosognosia patients grow out of as somehow their brains recover over time. But again, it shows you how much attention is constructed, right? Because they have this stuff to represent their arm, their disease. That's all in their mind and brain. But the state they're in because of the brain injury lets them not construct that reality. So now I'm going to show you measures of neglect. This is your list just for your notes, but it's sort of fun just to look at the examples. Here's a patient. With these patients, they typically have right-sided lesions, so the neglect is to the left half of the world. And here's a patient going to the bathroom as if all you can do is make right turns instead of going this way, as if the world weren't there. Proceed on the left. Here's another task that happens every day in a hospital. They're given, the physician has drawn these lines and says, cross out the lines. It's not perfect. The patient does that one, but look at, they cross out all these lines, and the left half ones are mostly left uncrossed. It's as if they weren't there. Here's what's called a cancellation task. There's lots of letters here, and their job is to cross out all the A's. Now, let me start with the neglect. You see over here, this whole area, nothing is circled or crossed out. And you could say, well, what would happen if instead of neglect, you were like one of those blind side patients? You had a big lesion in the cortex, and you were blind on one side. What would you do there? Well, it's easy for those patients, because what they do is they don't see part of the world, but what do? They turn their head. Just like you would do, right? They turn their head, okay? They don't see it, but they know they don't see it, and they turn their head. And the patient who's blind on one side, lost in the visual field, gets all the lines. Says all you have to do if you're blind on one side is turn your head, okay? It's not that hard in a practical sense. But if you don't imagine the left half of the world exists, where would you turn your head to? And that's what these neglect patients don't imagine the left half of the world exists. So here's an example of a patient reading a text. They're handed this text. The slash lines here are where this patient seems to think the left side of the page stops, okay? So they're overcoming everything they know about how a sentence should be, and reading this passage, the patient says, had to pass the windows, whom good morning message for the ground his, with all his and he bottle. Thank you very much, okay? It's right in front of him, but the left half of the page is just not present for this person's mind. Here is a person copying a flower. The psychologist or neurologist draws this flower or has a flower ready to go, and says, copy everything you see. And it's not always totally perfect exactly how it works, but you could see, there's a lot of the left side of this flower missing, right in front of them. Here's very simple.
I mean, what is particularly in this example, what is interesting is that also the circle itself that is in the flower doesn't get represented, because I will say it plays a role in the whole existence of the whole, I don't know, reality of it. Something like if they had the possibility of integrating both sides while just having one, they will also notice that somehow things are not as they seem, yet they can't do anything like that. But I mean, also at the same time, what is funny enough is they can look at the right side, or well, in this case, at the left side, even if supposedly they can, they can only move and operate in the left side of the world, let's say. But I don't know, interesting, very very thought provoking, let's say.
Simple one too. Copy everything
I mean, wait. Also, how the fuck can they draw the line?
you see here, and what they see is these three things up here. Their job is to copy everything down here. They have all the time they want. Left side is neglected, and all they copy is the triangle. That's all they draw. And the tester will always say, are you done? Are you sure you're done? The person says, I'm sure I'm done. Thank you very much. Sometimes they do something remarkable. They're shown a scene like this. Here's 4 trees and a house in the middle. And you can see this patient is sort of, starts over here and says, oh, there's a tree over here, draws this. They go, oh, there's a house over here. And they jump from location to location. Every time their attention lands, they draw the right half of it. Okay? It's always as if the left piece were missing. And again, this idea of how constructed this is. Here's 2 more examples. And the clock thing we'll talk a fair bit about. Here's a patient writing to dictation. The first sentence, they sort of stay up, but now it's as if they were running out of room on the page. It's like they're reading, but it's writing, okay? The left half of the page doesn't exist. Clocks are used a lot in this line because it's kind of impressive, and we'll come back in a couple different versions about this. But look at that. They were asked to draw the time on a clock, and it's as if they could draw the time on the right side, their good side, but it's as if the left half of the clock didn't exist. Here's another patient asked to draw the time, and you see almost what seems like a...
Anyways, these people are very damaged, my brother. Wait. Yeah, you don't even need to look further from here. You need to go back to this one and see 1, 3, 3, 4, 10, or what? 1, 3, 3, 4, 4, 4, X, S, X. They literally make no sense, my brother. Do you what? What is this, man? These people is really broken.
asked to draw the time, and you see almost what seems like a struggle in the patient, right? They start on the right side, and then here they're running out of space. They got to cram in that 10. Their mind knows it goes to 12, right? But there's no space to put it in, and so you put them in a sense of conflict. And that's the top version. The bottom, they were given numbers one at a time. They were given, it tells you here, 12 and 6, so they put those in the right spots. Here comes 11. Already 11 is like, uh-oh, right? And then they get 4, 9. 9 is not going to make it in 10. They know it has to come after. You can see that you put them actually kind of in a struggle between what they know, something about where the numbers ought to go, but the impossibility of the left half existing. But now here's something, and we'll come back to this in a few minutes. What happens if you just give them a piece of paper and say, write down 1 o'clock, and then you take that piece of the paper away, write down 2 o'clock, take that piece of paper away. Then look, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Those are not bad, right? If they just do one of them, the very same patient who had to crowd everything on the right, quite comfortable in putting on a pretty good 9, 10, and 11, okay? If it's just one of them. We'll come back to, in a little bit, to experiments that sort of help understand what's going on in this case. Because we don't ultimately want a scientist to say, wow, this is unbelievable and amazing, right? We like to say something more about how the mind is doing this and what part of the brain is important. And kind of impressively, here's a patient with eyes open, mostly crowding on the right, got that 10 on the left, but doing a better job when their eyes are closed. They missed the dial altogether. Their eyes are closed, but they actually do, the same patient does a better job, right? Okay, so how does that work? And one more thing to mention is that neglect occurs across modalities. That is, when these patients have neglect, I focus on the visual, but these patients also don't do very well if they're doing things like reaching for things. It's not just vision. It's pretty much everything in the left half of the world. And you can do these kinds of things, which again show but not only the neglect, but the constructed psychological nature of the neglect. It varies in ways that are interesting. So they're given a line like this and say, mark the exact middle. You would draw something here, they draw here because they're going to neglect that part of the line. Then they say, read the A. So they sort of draw the person's attention to A, and now draw it, and they get better. Then they're asked to mark the middle. Not too good. Mark the middle, but you see the difference here. The A is present or the B is present. And if the B is present, it sort of pulls them over here. If the A is present, it sort of pulls their attention over here. They put their hand at the middle and say, now please mark the middle. Their hand goes over here for the middle. But if they start them all the way over here, their hand will only go this far. So as you see all these different movements, it's telling you that the mind is kind of interpreting what the world is out there. If you pull a little bit the person to the left, they'll notice a little bit more of the left. Where is the injury? So almost everywhere you read, still in neurology books to this day, that it's in the parietal cortex. But in the last few years, people have mostly come to this idea, that the damage tends to be in the temporal lobe. And what happens when the temporal lobe is injured, it sort of knocks off the balance of attention in the left and right parietal cortex. And there's something about the activity in the right parietal cortex goes way down. That's paying attention to the left half of the world. And as patients recover from this, the balance comes back. And that's actually been measured now by brain imaging. That as their attention comes back clinically, and it does in most patients, then the balance between the two parietal cortices get reestablished. So even though people thought the site of damage was here, the interpretation is usually here in the temporal lobe. But the consequence of that is reduced activity in this part of the brain, even if it's not physically injured.
Okay. I hope it stops because I cannot see almost anything at this point. Not because I think it is meaningless, but rather because it is very, let's say, this is the reality that people is living, and most of the things that I wanted to say, I already said them, and everything else is like, I don't know, half a second idea that might as well be, wow, I cannot believe it, incredible. So yeah, nothing.
So the fantastic thing is, think about this for a second. In order to ignore the left half of a flower, the left half of a design, the left half of a page, the left half of a clock, what do you have to know? Where the left and right are. It's not as if his eyes were closed. If your eyes were closed, you wouldn't know where left and right are on a page, right? He has to represent in his mind what is left and right reasonably accurately. And then he extinguishes awareness that anything on the left could exist. But part of his mind has to know what is left for that to work, right? Otherwise, the digits would be all over the piece of paper, not even on the paper. You know, he centers on the paper. He centers on the circle, right? Centering means I know what's left. In other words, that's the center. And then, boom, the left disappears as a place that could exist. So these are all tasks in front of you. There's been some incredibly, Sherlock Holmes-like clever experiments asking whether you also neglect your imagination. Not what's in front of you, but your imagination. So here's the way they did it. Have any of you been in Milan? There's like a central cathedral in part of town, right? There's a big deal. And so he took Milanese patients, people who lived in Milan their whole lives, who had strokes in the right hemisphere, who had neglect. And he asked them to imagine the Piazza del Duomo, the major church there, looking at it from one side of the square or from entering from the opposite side of the square. So, okay? All right? And then I'll show you the other experiment. Here's the idea. They said, imagine that you're entering the square this direction, so that the church is behind you, or this direction so the church is in front of you. So you're entering the square from one side or from the other side. Now, the square that you've been to many times, that you know very well, tell me everything that's in the square as you imagine it entering from one side. And here's what the patient reports. They're imagining coming out facing the church, and they report these kinds of things from this side. If that's only on the right side, they're ignoring the thing. So they say there's a cafe, there's a bookstore, or whatever else there is here. That's everything that's in the square. Everything that's in the square that's shown in red, everything that's in the square. They wait just moments, and they say, now imagine instead you were coming out from the church, right? Opposite view of the square. Tell me everything that's in the square. And here's what they tell you. The items that are in blue, and they don't tell you the items they just told you, the locations they just told you, circled in red. So they're sitting there imagining their square, and then they will ignore everything on their left, whatever is their subjective left. And you know they know it because all they have to do is imagine they're on the opposite side of the square, and then they report it. Okay, does that make sense? They're ignoring the left half of what they imagine the square looks like, one they've been to many times. And here's another patient doing exactly the same thing. Imagine you're coming out of the church. What's in the square? Well, here's some specific places I know. That's it. That's it. Wait a minute. Imagine you come this way into the square, facing the church. What's everything in the square? And they only report the things on this side. Okay, so they're ignoring. Yeah. No, they never do. That's an excellent question. They just answered a moment ago, one side, right? Why don't they tell you, I just told you the stuff on the other side? Because it's as if it couldn't exist, right? I mean, it's a little bit analogous to the patient whose arm isn't moving, and you go, do you have any problem? They go, no, I don't have any problem. It's as if there couldn't be a problem. Like, what are you talking about, right? So it overcomes all their knowledge and all their intelligence. It's as if I forced you to guess in detail what's in the back of the room if something new is there, and you go, there's no way. I can't see it in the eyes. I have no eyes in the back of my head. Right? It's sort of like that. It's as if the left half couldn't exist. The contradiction they could note, right? Just a moment ago, I told you the other one. They don't notice it because something about this neglect swallows up all your judgments. It's not as beautifully phrased, by some neurologists. It's as if the left half could not exist. Whenever you're thinking left, it doesn't exist. And ironically, you have to think left for that to work, right? You know what I mean? That's the amazing thing. You have to go, I'm in the middle. There's a left, there's a right. Now the left doesn't exist, and it couldn't exist. And every hint I get that it does exist, like there's food on that side, or the pages usually go all the way here, and the sentences make sense. It all disappears on you because it couldn't possibly exist. And the neat thing about that is, it's striking neurologically, but that means in our own heads as we go around, we're constructing the world this way, building up two sides of our brain that are gluing together a picture of the world around us. And these patients lose that glue on one side of their brain. Is that okay? Here's another version. It's sort of less flashy a bit, but it's the same idea. Now, neglect can't get small enough, okay? If you make something very tiny, you don't ignore the left side. But once it gets tiny enough, you can't do it. So they took advantage of that, and they showed cloud-like stimulus of these, but they didn't show them like this. They only had a slit. So you only saw the cloud a bit at a time. And you see one cloud, and then you see another cloud. Perhaps you see this cloud go by, and then you see this cloud go by. And your job was to say, were they identical clouds or not? And if they were not identical, on which side do they differ? So because all your visual experience is through this slit, which is too small for neglect to happen, what you do is you create in your mind's eye, what does that whole cloud look like as it passed through the slit in your mind's eye? And then you see another one, and you put that up in your mind's eye, and you compare these two things that are in your imagination in your mind's eyes. And what happens is, if these two things differ on the left side, the patients rarely can make that distinction. Okay? It's not because they can't see it. It's always in that narrow slit. But once they put the pieces together, they put it up in their mind, the left half disappears on them in their mind's eyes. So here's an experimental approach to think about what might be going wrong in these patients. So they used a very simple task, which is when a light comes on, you push a button. That's all the task is. Any light comes on, you push a button. And sometimes they'll put an arrow, and sometimes you have no information. The light comes on to the left or the right. And sometimes they'll put on an arrow in the middle that will warn you whether the light is likely to come on to the left or the right. So sometimes you have neutral things. You get a cross in the middle, then the light comes on. You don't have to say left and right. You just push a button when one of those goes on. Sometimes you get an arrow that's called valid, that 80% of the time, if it's pointing this way, it will turn out on that side. 80% it will turn out on this side. So 80% of the time is honest, and 20% of the time is dishonest. So here's what it looks like. You're looking here on a computer display. That thing disappears, and then either an X is here, and you push a button. That's all. Or a light comes on, you just push a button. Okay, that's all. It came on the left or the right, I push a button. When an arrow appears, 80% of the time it's warning you where that light will appear. 20% it's dishonest, and it appears on the opposite side. So you will know how good an experimental psychologist you are right now if I ask you, which condition do you think you're the fastest to push the button? When you have an arrow that's truly telling you where the light will come on, an arrow that's misleading you, or the X that tells you nothing? Which do you think you'll be fastest? Where the arrow's pointing, right? Like, here's the answer over here. Okay, thank you very much. All right. Which do you think you'll be slowest on? The dishonest arrow, right? The arrow says, look over here, and you're looking over there and go, oh no, it came on the other side, you lied to me, okay? All right? And the X is in the middle, and here's the data. I mean, it's a very simple experiment, right? How fast are you? This is reaction time, just to push a button when it comes on. Here's the neutral condition in the middle. You're a little bit faster if it's an honest arrow. You're a little bit slower if it's a dishonest, misleading arrow. So now you do this exact experiment, and I'll show you the data, and then I'll simplify it for you, okay? With patients who have right-sided damage, left-sided neglect. And you can see as you look at these lines, the arrow can be honest or dishonest, and it can be in the left or right side. Now, if you're always bad on the...
Well, I mean, okay, let me say something, because I think I have sit here for the last, I don't know, 10 minutes without saying anything, so yeah. I think what I can add so far is probably in a more meaningful way. And finally, I guess we have some more average human examples. It might happen that in some, not some, in most of the cases, we see not simply ourselves, but even more the whole world, and we interpret all of the things into the coherent narrative that fits our particular conditions. So, if sometimes we find ourselves trying to make not only sense of what was before established as correct, but also we also see that what was or what should have been not professionally, correctly, yeah, almost correctly correct in the sense of they need to be correct because they need how to fucking say it, like you cannot make sense of what doesn't carry the attribute of sense. You can only understand the world through the things that you already see and through the things that you already comprehend to a certain degree. So, if the world in which you are trying to exist doesn't allow you to make sense of it, how will you make it have sense? Let's say. So, I will expect, yeah, even more probably in the next course, what the fuck, in the next example, probably to talk about the idea more or even more of those who are like, what is it, neglect on the brain. Those people will probably truly struggle to realize that what they are observing has no possibility of really being what I thought it was, as it cannot carry in any way a reality that is opposite to what they are feeling is real. So yeah, something like that. Let me continue. Let me continue a little bit. We don't have that much more to see. So yeah.
On the neglected side, you go, well, that's not a big surprise. But here's the surprise. Patients were only bad, the times were way up here only when they had a dishonest arrow that sent them into their good side. That's when they were really bad. So let's take a look at this again. So here's the bad side, here's the good side. When an arrow comes on that's honest, good. When an arrow comes on that's an honest arrow this way, they do fine. That's their bad field, but they do fine. Tiny bit slower, but just a tiny bit. Arrow comes on that moves them into their bad field, but it's really the light is on here, they do fine. But if an arrow sends them into their good field, then they're really, really slow to get back here. So Posner's argued that when you move your attention in the world, you have 3 steps you have to do. You have to disengage your attention from where you're paying attention, just logically. I'm paying attention here right now. I'm going to pay attention over here. I have to pull myself up from here, move my attention over here, and then focus here. So you disengage, get out from where you are, move to where you need to go, and land and focus what you want to do. And the only condition where they're bad is where they have to get their attention out of the good field. As if once they're in that good field, once their mind is landed in that good field, they're in quicksand.
I mean, probably something that I notice here is most of the time because in our, I would say it, mental narrative, we cannot integrate so much the rapid eye movements that we have from one thing to the other. We feel as if they were not there. But anyways, we get affected by what we probably not see because we are moving so rapidly through the whole reality that we have those moments of, as it says here, needing to go from one place to the other, and while removing our attention from one place, settling down on a completely new thing. So, what I was kind of surprised is that they were capable of identifying things when they were forced to go to the complete opposite of side of their attention. Like before, I would have expected the people with neglect to not even realize that something was existing um, on the left side. So yeah.
And it's going to be really hard to get their attention to move into the bad field. So think about this. Clocks are perfect for this. Because when you draw a clock, mostly, think about this intuitively, I were to ask you to draw the numbers on a clock, you start with a 12 typically, then what's the next one you would draw? 1, because that's how we're taught to do clocks. Disaster if you have neglect. You know, you're in the good field, right? Now the left half of the clock has disappeared on you, and you got it because the clock has made you land your attention on the good field, and now you can't pull out of it, okay? But what happens if you only have to draw 8 o'clock? Your attention never got moved into the good field. It's just starting from the middle, so to speak. And this very same patient can draw the 8 o'clock or 10 o'clock pretty well. That make sense? Because they never got stuck in the good field. They only moved into the bad field. They can move into the bad field. And so if their eyes are closed, that's better. They get less stuck. And now we understand this thing. Why is it these patients, if both fingers are moving? Because once their attention is drawn into the good field, it's as if the bad field disappeared on them. But if they only get stimulated in the bad field, so right side here, then they're OK. Because they never paid that much attention to the good field. So they can't. So this is a nice experiment. It shows you what is the problem. The problem is once you're paying attention to the good field, the normal, healthy field, it's so powerful compared to the weakened representation here that you never leave it because it just seems like everything. Now here's a clever one. Again, this shows you how much of attention is created by our minds as opposed to just simply defined by the environment. So what if you show a display to somebody with neglect and then rotate the display right in front of them, okay? So initially the neglect is going to be on the left side, but imagine the thing is turning over like this, right in front of them. Will the neglect travel with the initial assignment? So this is from Marlene Berman, a very clever experiment. They have to pay attention if the light comes on here or here. But what they do is while the experiment's going on, right in front of you, it slowly rotates over to here. And sure enough, then the light comes on. Sure enough, the neglect now moves into the good field. Because once you've assigned left and right, you know this is left. So OK, you turn it over. That's still really left, OK? But think how weird that is. The mind is deciding that in an absolute sense. This thing is on the right, but the mind said, this is the leftward one, and you can flip it over, but you're not tricking me. You know, I know it's on the left, and I'm considering it the leftward one, right? The mind is deciding what counts as left and right, not the world. And what other kinds of processes, information is being processed that's not reaching attentional level? So here's a cute experiment. They would say to these patients, any difference between these two things? No. But if you had to live in one of these houses, which one do you think you'd live? Well, I don't know. They're pretty much the same. Why would I pick one? Well, pick one. They go, that's a little better place to live. If I have to pick one. Which vase do you want? I don't know. They look the same, right? Have to pick this one, OK? Which glass to drink from? Have to pick this one. So they don't consciously are not aware of what's going on here when there's information to the opposite side to draw their attention, but something in their mind somewhere is picking up information. So the last question, and I'll show you a final video, is this. What kind of information is picked up in the neglected field as you decide some part of your mind to neglect it? So imagine if I showed you 2 forks versus a fork and a spoon, OK? In order for that to make a difference, whether you report both are present. So again, if you have a right-sided lesion, you might tend not to report this fork or not to report this key. If you just don't report either one, OK, left is left, and you're bad at reporting that when there's something competing in the good field. Right? Your attention gets drawn here, hard to disengage. But if it makes a difference what this thing is, that means, right, that your mind kind of knows what it is. And your mind is saying, well, if it's a key, that's different enough that I can still pay attention to it. But if it's another fork, well, those are really similar, and now my mind is really sucked into this fork. But in order for that to make a difference, do you see that you have to know somewhere in your mind what's different on the left, okay, for that to affect your performance? So now we'll see a video of a patient, the last one. This is a neurologist, Bob Raffel, and a patient. It's a hugely nice thing of the patients, most of all, but also the physicians to make these tapes available for teaching purpose.
Fuck! Anyways, I knew it.
So you understand, just review for one moment and we're done, that when the same object came up, did he pretty much notice the one on the bad side and the right side for him? No, right? Same object, he almost always said is one. If they're different objects, he typically reported slightly sluggishly the one on his bad side. That means part of his mind has to know what the object is, so that he ignores it if it's identical, and he reports it if it's different.
Quality content, copyright.
Well, you have to know what it is to base your answer on that. Yet the logic of neglect is that if they're identical, then he's going to ignore the one that he spotted on the left in part of his mind, but squashed from his awareness in the other side. OK, thanks very much.
OK, that is finally. We finished this whole video. I think it has been so far one of the longest lessons in this particular case, because I also tried to integrate a little bit more of using the tool that we finally have in our hands, that is the whiteboard. So yeah, it was very nice, but I am incredibly tired of this. So yeah, once again, we need to take a break. So yeah, I mean, I could try to force to continue. I would like to not force anything for the sake of um, keeping our energies alive for the future. So yeah, basically that. Pretty fine, pretty amazing. I feel in a sense it was too dark somehow, or not somehow, very clearly. We are speaking about people that is almost completely broken, in a sense, because a whole side of the world gets blocked to you. So yeah, I don't know, very grim of a thing to learn. I don't remember if I have seen, or at least if I have been presented so deeply something like this before. So yeah, very, very, very nice to see at the very least. And well, aside from that, also as I was trying to say is wait, let me turn this on. Look at this. Um, we did a little bit of learning. We did a little bit of mind mingling. So yeah, we are very fine somehow. But now I guess I think we shall try to take a break. Why? Because it is better to stay safe than to completely eliminate all of our energies for the sake of doing it. So we also should try to raise somebody because it might be a necessary step for us to continue resting properly. So what the fuck? No, give me no my fucking god. Give me a second. We need. I don't think I can write here. Tell me that this account is old enough. Give me people. This is amazing. This is content. What? Let me see. Can I set this up? Can I tell me that I can write? I will be amazed. The account. Yeah, let's fucking go. Okay, people. We're going to write Emopuki, basically. But well, anyways, as I was trying to say, thanks for everything, thanks for everything, thanks for paying attention, thanks for lurking, thanks for watching the world, thanks for commenting, thanks for every single thing. As always, it is by your support that this is still persevering. And now we shall take a break, we shall leave to watch a little bit of content, to rest our minds with something not so incredibly dense as the lessons that we tend to consume here. In this particular case, we are going to Emobuki, who is playing Holocure Holy. Oh, what a BOM this is. So yeah, basically entertainment. Yeah! As always, people, thanks for everything. But we also need to live, we need to take care of ourselves. And whenever the next opportunity arises, we're going to be back here. For now, we need, as I said before, to live. Please remain well, remain safe, stay hydrated, take care of yourself, and whenever it happens, it happens. Now, raid. Beep, 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 beep. Amazing.